Humans create a lot of pollution. There's no argument about that. The most obvious kind of pollution that we're all familiar with is trash, garbage, waste, commercial debris, and detritus. All of the human-created products that don't get recycled, or they get irresponsibly disposed of. This kind of trash and commercial waste includes plastics, paper, furniture, clothing, toys, and miscellaneous items, as well as cigarette butts, which have a disproportionately large negative effect on local vegetation. And pharmaceutical drugs flushed down the sink or the toilet, where they then affect downstream amphibian communities, for example. And there's also the industrial waste that's created from mining metals and other chemicals out of the ground, from processing and refining these chemicals. And to top it all off, we have the waste CO2 generated by our internal combustion engine technology. Cars, planes, transoceanic cargo ships, heavy industry, all of this stuff produces a tremendous amount of CO2 and other atmospheric waste gases. Our physical waste isn't actually the full extent of our pollution. The full extent of our pollution goes far beyond just the physical. We also create light pollution and sound pollution. Light pollution is a tricky issue, because in the wilderness, plants and animals have evolved to respond to the cycles of the sun, and the moon, and even to the stars. Many species of bird, for example, are known to use the position of certain stars during certain seasons to help them navigate. Light pollution from towns and cities can block out this natural starlight. It can confuse the birds and disrupt their migratory patterns. Light pollution can also disrupt sleep cycles too, and this applies not just to wild animals that are exposed to the 24-hour light, the glow coming from cities, but it also applies to us. We are beginning to see more and more effects of human light pollution on the human psyche, mostly from our smartphones and our computer screens, and the biggest casualty so far has been to our quality of sleep. There's another type of pollution, and that's sound pollution. And this brings us to today's news, as there's been a recent study that has quantified sound pollution and examined just how it affects the wild world that exists on the edges of and beyond the limits of our urban sprawl. The paper was published in the journal Biology Letters. By analyzing over 100 species, including representative members of the fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, arthropods, and mollusks, researchers were able to identify consistent ways in which noise pollution has negative effects. If we understand that light pollution interferes with animals who use light to navigate, to hunt, and to regulate their sleep cycles, then it also makes sense that noise pollution would interfere with animals that use noises, for example, to call for a mate, or to detect predators, or anything else that's critical for their survival and reproduction. Dr. Hans-Jörg Kunz of the School of Biological Sciences at Queen's University, Belfast, was the lead author of the paper. When discussing the results of the study, he reports that they found, quote, clear evidence that noise pollution affects all 7 groups of species, unquote. Dr. Kunz also said, quote, this large-scale quantitative study provides significant evidence that noise pollution must be considered as a serious form of man-made environmental change and pollution, illustrating how it affects so many aquatic and terrestrial species. Noise must be considered as a global pollutant, and we need to develop strategies to protect animals from noise for their livelihoods, unquote. To expand on these animal livelihoods that the study author described, there are species of amphibians, birds, insects, and mammals that all use sound to communicate vital information, like calling for a mate, or announcing that there's a predator nearby, or that food has been located. But noise pollution, like from heavy equipment or a nearby freeway or airport, can disrupt this communication by drowning it out and making it harder for individuals to hear each other. In extreme proximity to these sites of human-created noise, animals can suffer hearing loss, just like any humans would if they lived that close to an airport or a freeway. Most people would move, and most animals do what they can to get away from the sound of noise. And then you have animals like predators, like bats and owls, which have very sensitive hearing, which they use to identify, locate, and track their prey, often because they're traveling in complete darkness. If, while this bat or owl is out there hunting, and there's some ambient background noise pollution, like from nearby traffic, or again an airport, this will seriously impair their ability to hunt and feed themselves and any offspring they might have. Even aquatic species cannot escape the effects of sound pollution. Coral reefs are thriving communities with their own unique biological sound, a music or an orchestra, if you will, produced by all of the activity of the resident creatures. Fish larvae are attracted to these biological hotspots because they can hear the sounds of other fish living in the coral reef. But when a cargo ship churns by, its engines produce a heavy thrumming that can be heard for miles in every direction. This confuses and disorients the fish larvae, preventing them from locating and swimming towards healthy reefs. They might find lower quality reefs, which will lead them to living lower quality lives in lower quality environments, and having fewer and more unhealthy offspring. In this way, entire populations of fish can be dispersed and affected negatively across the generations by sound pollution. Dr. Kunz is right. Noise pollution is a global problem that we need to be more mindful of. We need to reduce and control not just our waste pollution and not just our light pollution, but also our sound pollution too. We need to live symbiotically with the planet, which means living in cooperation and peace with other life forms. Our activity on this planet should be quiet and subtle and discreet, so as to reduce our impact across the board. If we don't, if we continue to behave in this egregious, overconsumptive, overly damaging and polluting way, we will simply degrade and dissolve the natural world around us until it's destroyed. We'll inflict it with 1,000 disruptive pollutants, be they discarded materials, excessive light, or even sound.